Welcome back, viewers. We are discussing Joy Harjo, the Native American poet, today, and in this lecture, we will take up some of the themes of Joy Harjo and see how they can be applied to her poems. Now, I will take you through some of the themes that you find in Joy Harjo's poetry, and we'll take them to her work specifically. Now, one of the most important theme in her work is, of course, the idea of history. Now, Joy Harjo actually challenges mainstream historical narratives. She, in fact, uplifts these indigenous voices around her, and she tries to build a kind of an alternate history of the Native American people through her works. Now, this is one of the major themes of her work, talking about Native American identity and history, but at the same time she highlights the indigenous people's traditions, their cultures, and also highlighting their struggles. She tries to bridge the gap between the past traditions and the future generations through her works by bringing in a sense, constantly referring to her ancestors, constantly referring to past traditions, myths that exist, and then trying to connect with the future generation who's out there reading or listening to her. She uses art to build a kind, to educate and inspire. She also is in the course of her poetry, she is also using imagery that is specific or the myths that are specific to Native American people, and there is a kind of an underlying strain of spirituality which you could connect with nature, because nature is an important force in her poetry, and the ecological aspect of it remains important for her, and she tries to connect it with her feminist concerns by bringing in the method of survival and bringing in resilience within her poetic framework. Now, let me take you to one of the poems that I thought I would discuss with you today, and this is from her collection She Had Some Horses, which came out in 1983. Now, the poem is titled I Give You Back. Now, this poem, I Give You Back, is basically on fear. This poem you should be able to also see see a video which is available on the web, and you can see that she is actually performing this particular poem. It's in fact, because as I mentioned in my previous lecture, Joy Harjo is also a musician, right, and she's a singer. So she often takes her poetry to the stage and performs it, and this is one of her oft quoted poems and often played in poetry circles, this kind of poetry, because she is referring to fear here, and referring to her struggles with fear. Again, she noted that there was a period in her life where she felt completely broken, and she felt she was in complete despair. Now, this poem in a way was her way through which she could emerge victorious from that moment of crisis. Now, when she says, I release you, my beautiful terrible fear, I release you. You were my beloved and hated twin, but now I don't know you. Now, the idea is that I release you, my beautiful terrible fear. Why is she calling fear beautiful? There is a sense in her that that this has had a kind of control over her, and a kind of has an element of the sublime within it, and which is why she refers to it as beautiful. Now, terrible is something that she obviously associates with fear, and she says that I release you, you were my beloved and hated twin. Now, suggesting that you had become a part of my person or had a complete control over me, and this is when she says I release you and I will not have you control me anymore. So she says, I don't know you as myself, I release you with all the pain I would know at the death of my children. So there is a sense of a splintering of the self, in many ways you could call it, as it were, where the writer is trying to come to terms, she is trying to hack a part of herself which has remained within her for very long, and she says, you are not my blood anymore, which means you were my blood till the other day. Right? So, in a way, suggesting that that fear had gripped her body and soul and had completely overpowered her, and this is the moment where she has taken charge of her life, and she has now moved away from that moment when it could control her completely. And she says, I give you back to the soldiers who burned down my home, beheaded my children, raped and sodomized my brothers and sisters. I give you back to those who stole the food from our plates when we were starving. I release you, fear, because you hold these scenes in front of me, and I was born with eyes that can never close. You can see the flow. You can see how it is musical at the same time. Now, the idea when she refers to the violence, right? Now, the poem begins on a note where it's a kind of a personal relationship, with fear, as it were, where she says that, I release you, you've held me for a very long time and all that. But immediately she takes she broadens the scope of her discussion and brings in the soldiers. She says, I give you back to the soldiers who burned down my home. Now, again, you see the reference of Native American, history here, that soldiers, American white soldiers who came down and burned my home, reminding us of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, where the Native Americans were forced to leave their habitats and move on the other side of the river. Now, who burned down my home and beheaded my children? The violence that came forth with this kind of massacre. Of course, you see, the Native Americans see this as a kind of genocide. We must remember that, even Sherman Alexie, the other Native American poet that I referred to in my previous lectures, refers to this kind of genocide as very similar to the one that happened in Auschwitz. And he says that, what happened to Jews in Germany is what happened to the Native Americans in America. So, in a way, the idea of bringing forth this idea of massacre, of genocide, is a recurring theme in Native American poetry. Now, you can see the violence and beheading of the children, in the rape and sodomizing my brothers and sisters. It's a history of violence that she is referring to, and yet she's not going to be subsumed by this moment. She's also going to come out of it. But before she reaches, she also refers to, I give you back to those who stole the food from our plates. Now, if you remember, I've discussed this earlier as well, how the Native American people felt that because they had to shift their habitats, they didn't know how to they were not into agriculture, right? They were not growing crops, so their way of living and their way of livelihood was by hunting. And by taking them away from their habitats, the white settlers had also taken away food from them, because now they were supposed to fetch food which they were not used to, and grow that in a way that they were not used to, and also live in a place that they were new to. So, in a way, you have, by displacing people from their natural habitats, you have stolen food from their plates. This is what she says, that I give you back to those who stole the food from our plates when we were starving. This is what she says, that this is what was given to me. There was fear when, there is fear in an entire community, because they feel that, there's so much of massacre and so much violence has gone down in history that they continue to fear. So, the Native American fear is a real thing. And in this poem, she says that I no more want to be overpowered by it. I no more want fear to rule our lives. And she says, I release you because you hold these scenes in front of me, and I was born with eyes that can never close. Now, what do you think eyes that never close means? I was born with eyes that can never close. What are your insights into this? Does she mean here memory? Does she mean recording? What do the eyes do? The eyes record, right? So, when she says, I was born with eyes that can never close, she says, my eyes are constantly recording. I am witness to this history. I have been, and in a way, there is a kind of a deeper connection and a history that she's built with her, with her forefathers, where she says, those eyes have carried on in me. What they saw has been passed on and, to my generation, and I continue the act of recording. So, the act of recording is bearing witness to the violence that has occurred in the past. And she says that they survive in memory. Remember, in my previous lecture, I mentioned how memory is one of the important themes in Joy Harjo's work. So, eyes that never close also record, but they also store that data in your mind as memory. So, she says that they will stay with me, they will find expression, and when the writer You see, there is violence that she has seen, there is violence that she has heard, that her eyes have seen, that her mind has recorded and put them in memory. But as a poet, she has brought them back. It came in, but now she's been able to, in expressing, she has been able to show it to the world, the kind of violence that were done to the community. So the act is complete of recording and then of output, that is of expressing it in words through poetry and laying bare the violence that the community had to go through. So, and let's go further into the poem. She says, "Oh, you have choked me, but I gave you the leash. You have gutted me, but I gave you the knife. You have devoured me, but I laid myself across the fire." Now, suggesting here that yes, you choked me, but I gave you the leash. So you see, she begins from an individual point, makes it social, historical and all of that, and then returns to the self. So there is a self, that is the inner life, then there is the I, that captures the outer life, and then the return to the inner life again. Because she's saying that you have been able to control me because I let you. I let you choke me, therefore you could choke me. And this is an act of resistance and a rejection that she does here, that I take myself back, fear, which means I take myself back from you, that you shall have no control over me, you are not my shadow any longer. Suggesting that the history of violence has continued till she has woken up to destroy it, she has woken up to reject it. And she says, I won't hold you in my hands. You can't live in my eyes, my ears, my voice, my belly, or in my heart. So there is a sense of complete, you could say, a complete dissociation with the kind of, with the colonizers, so to speak, wish that the Native Americans stay in a state of fear. And she says that she has completely dissociated herself from that kind of life, and she has completely, as I said, I use the word splintered, she has completely drawn that self out of her, that came to her probably from her parents and from her relatives and elders, because they told her to live in fear. But she says, I will live no longer. And so there is an act of, there is a rejection of that way of life, that the way of living afraid forever. And she says here that fear, I am alive and now you are afraid of dying. So she reverses it at the end of the poem. She reverses the logic by calling herself alive and calling the fear as something which is now afraid, because now you are dying, because I no more let you live through me. Now, at one level, of course, this poem is about her personal journey through terror. There was an instance where I was reading about it, through her interviews also, she mentions this, that how when she had to live with her alcoholic, abusive husband, how it would terrorize her to live with him. So there is a terror that she is also referring to, that comes from patriarchy, that comes from living with somebody who's constantly evoking fear. So fear is of the Native American people, fear of being a woman and raising your kids alone by yourself, fear vis-a-vis, fear in matrimony of the husband. So there are so many layers to this kind of personal journey as well. And the moment you take it as a kind of a universal poem, then you find that fear is something that we all encounter in life. So she says, in fact, when she recites this poem, she says, I'll tell you a recipe, I'll tell you how to get rid of fear, right? So in a way, she connects with her audience by using a very universal emotion and suggesting that how fear is what keeps us grounded, fear is what makes us suffer, and and how we need to claim ourselves back and not fall in the trap of fear, because once you draw or disentangle yourself from this kind of fear, you will find that this fear begins to die. So you can see there is a kind of a universal language of love and fear or suffering that she raises, but also a very personal journey as a feminist, as a woman's voice, and as a Native American woman who might have felt doubly marginalized within this kind of a American aggressive culture. So this is what I wanted you to understand vis-a-vis one of her poems, where she says, which is I Give You Back. Now similar is another poem which she calls Call It Fear. Now just this is also from She Had Some Horses. Now she says, there is this edge where shadows and bones of some of us walk backwards, talk backwards. There is this edge, call it an ocean of the fear of the dark, unquote. Now there is, what does she mean really? There is an eerie sense to this poem. The other one, was more direct, more statement oriented, and in that sense, could be delivered as a kind of a song or performance. But this one is more evocative, because it builds a kind of an image which we don't really understand. And she says here that there is this edge where shadows and bones of some of us walk backwards. Now what does she mean by shadows and bones walking backwards, right? She says they talk backwards. Now backwards is again a reference to her past, right? That we must go back. Remember, I just quoted from this interview where she says you need to dive deep in order to bring out anything valuable in poetry. Now diving deep is also diving backwards in time, in space, in your past. So she finds that who we are today, we seem to become lost in this frenzy or in this world that that she calls the American way of life. But she says that we need to constantly revisit and walk backwards to that past, talk backwards in order to bring back that language that has been lost, that is the Native American language, the local language. And she says that there is this edge where shadows and bones of some of us walk backwards, talk backwards. There is this edge, call it an ocean of the fear of the dark. Right? So she says that we are constantly on the edge, we are constantly dealing with a situation where we are drowned in this ocean of fear of the dark. So suggesting that the way out for the Native American culture or for the people is to be able to strip themselves of the kind of tradition of fear that they have carried for long, and to be able to penetrate the dark oceans of life even when they appear vague. She says it's all right to be able to pierce through them with a sense of courage. So as she says, poetry teaches you to tell the truth. I think she is talking also about that courage that comes by when you want to go forward. Her point is, if you want to go forward, you need to go backwards, which means that in order to be able to build a map or a kind of a path for yourselves, you need to revisit your past, your language, your history, and from there gain sustenance and identity, which will then help you launch further in life, because the present seems very shaky, the present seems very in that sense unstable. So there is this that she is trying to evoke through her poetry, and using fear as one of as an important, potent sort of emotion to deal with that history. Now just a couple of minutes, and I wanted to just take you to one of the other poems, which is titled She Had Some Horses. Now just to show you that how poetry may not be always as direct as we understand it to be. Now I'll just quote a couple of lines for you, just for you to be able to make sense of it. See if you can. She says, and I quote, "She had horses who were bodies of sand. She had horses who were maps drawn of blood. She had horses who were skins of ocean water. She had horses with long pointed breasts. She had horses with full brown thighs. She had horses who laughed too much. She had horses who threw rocks at glass houses. She had horses who licked razor blades." Unquote. What sense do you make of this? you see, this is a poem which is so coded, and in fact, it is something that a lot of people have tried to make sense of. They don't know what she means by horses. There is a view that horses could refer to the many horses within a woman, that is many selves of the woman, or that these all these horses are different types of women, or that this refers to a layered history of women and their lives, or still this has nothing to do with women, even though it says she, right? It's about a kind of a relationship that Native American people have with horses. Now, in the introduction to this book, she had some horses. Harjo refers to how the horses were seen as very an integral link of their nation, Creek nation, where her cousins she could boast of being able to speak to horses, right? And her forefathers also felt that they had a deeper connection with horses. Now, taken this something from the folklore, from the myth of the Native American people, and now bringing it to the present times and layering it with the woman's experience. She says at the end of the poem, and I quote, "She had some horses she loved, she had some horses she hated, these were the same horses." Unquote. Now, the idea that in fact this is the same person, that you have a part of you that you love, you have a part of you that you hate. But again, I wouldn't say that you should go with any simplistic reading, but build your own understanding, as Joy Harjo also refers to in in her works, that poetry is not to be made sense, it is not based on what it means, but rather how it speaks to you. So, and especially a poem like this, which which is a kind of a coded poem. In the introduction to the book, Harjo said, and I quote, that horses, like the rest of us, can transform and be transformed. So she's clearly hooking herself to the transformative power of horses, and the horse can become this and become that. If you read this poem, then horses are also facilitating a sort of violence, horses are protecting. So there is a sense of life that she is building by constantly using the leitmotif of horses, which could mean the lives of women, or she could mean women's extension of themselves. So there is a kind of logic that she is trying to build which doesn't make sense. Now, she also says in her introduction, and let me quote this bit for you to understand what horses could mean really. She says, "I come from a people who are taught to forget nothing." Remember the eye, she referred to the eye, I have eyes that can never close. So similar, she says here, "I come from a people who are taught to forget nothing. I believe that every thought, every word, every song or horse that existed makes a morale of existence that gives form to this one we find ourselves in." Unquote. Suggesting here that the horse could refer to, in fact, all aspects of life. She says that every thought, every word, every song or horse, suggesting that is the horse really a song, or is horse a poem? Is horse basically women's expression? She says all of these experiences, and is horse really a human being, right? That all these are a morale of existence, right? And they put in different situations, but there is a common sense of, there is a dialectic operating here, or a sort of contradiction, that you must live with it, but you do not like it. And in many ways, I find this, this is my reading, you can have your own reading about the poem, but in many ways I feel this is exactly the predicament of the Native American in America. She says, let's go back, let me take you back to this last two lines. She says, where she had some horses she loved, she had some horses she hated, these were the same horses. Now, suggesting that you love, and what you love you also hate, and they are the same horses. Is this America? That you love it because this is actually your own native land, but then you hate it because for what it has done to you. You see, think of the predicament of the Native American writer. You live in a place where you are seen as a kind of a museum piece, but actually you were the first owners of that land. You were the people to whom this land belonged, to whom America belonged, till the white settlers came in and called America their own land. And then they completely marginalized you, killed your people, sent you on some reservation camp and said, now start living there as if we were protecting you. And you know, and you have been the one who have killed all our people, taken away all our land. So, and but you know, as a product of this culture in the 20th century, she's won awards. She's also won, she's the poet laureate of US, you know, called, you know, she's first Native American woman to get that kind of laurel. But you know, what is her relationship with America? It's a place she loves, but it's also the place she hates, because, or it's the people, you know, the America as she has grown up with. America has given her a lot for what she can love it for, but at the same time she hates it because it has also taken away from her. So this kind of a dialectical relationship that she had, that a Native American writer has with the country called America, where they are never seen as you know, the actual people of the land, but as museum pieces. There is, I think, this love-hate relationship that she tries to project through her poem, She Had Some Horses. And that's my reading, of course, of the poem. You can obviously build your own readings into the poem. Now, this you know, brings me close to one of the last works that I wanted to discuss with you, which is titled Skeleton of Winter. Now, Skeleton of Winter is a poem where she talks about memory, and which is why, since I mentioned memory as one of the themes in her works, I thought, let me bring this poem also to you. Now, memory also signals hope, right? Even in times that are too dark for poetry, she says that there is still memory, the other side, and still I see. You can notice that in the previous poem, Fear, where you know, I give you back, she also referred to her eyes that never close. Here again she says that still I see. No matter what happens, I see, and by seeing I record events. They turn into memories, memories turn into expression, expression turns into poetry, and in books that are read by you and me and discussed by us. So in a way, her act, her you know, her so the social function of poetry is complete in her works, because she's been able to put it in aesthetic form, the struggles and you know, of the people, and by using memory as an important tool. Memory is also an agency in her works, if you notice, and this is something that I wanted you to keep in mind while reading Joy Harjo. In fact, in the same poem she says, I am memory alive, not just a name. Right? So suggesting that she is the key, she is in a way keeping those memories alive within her. And you know, this is where I'd like to end my lecture, by giving you a sense of the writer, but also that she lived her life on her own terms, and of course she's still living her life on her own terms, but she's drawing inspiration from the strength of other women like Audre Lorde I mentioned, but also becoming an inspiration for the young poets who see in her a kind of a who see her spirit of survival and her resilience as an important way through which they can deal with their own situations. I will end my lecture by a quote by Adrienne Rich. Many of you would know that she is also a poet in her own right and an important American feminist. And Adrienne Rich said the following about Joy Harjo. I quote, I turn and return to Harjo's poetry for her breathtaking complex witness and for her world remaking language, precise, unsentimental, miraculous, unquote. This is in nutshell what you'd find in Joy Harjo's poetry, Native American, but not unsentimental, but unsentimental, that is, humanism as a very important way through which she accesses all cultures, and a sense of universalism. So with this, viewers, we come to the close of today's lecture, and I'll see you for another lecture very soon.